It happened on the Detroit River, a very historic event that happened 122 years ago on the river that many people may not know about. This story involves the steamship Tashmoo and the American President Theodore Roosevelt. President Theodore Roosevelt had been a hero of the Spanish-American War in 1898. During the Battle of San Juan Hill on July 1st, the Rough Riders, under the command of the then Lieutenant Colonel Roosevelt, made their mark in American military history. Roosevelt became the President of the United States after the assassination of his predecessor, William McKinley, in 1901, the youngest man ever to become president at the age of 42. This newspaper headline states that Roosevelt was on his way to Detroit to address the veterans of the Spanish-American and the Civil War. In the late 19th century, Detroit was known as the Little Paris of the Midwest. Note the streetcars, bicycles, and horse-drawn carriages. It was an era just before the automobile took hold forever. You can see Roosevelt getting out of the carriage with the mayor of Detroit, William Mayberry, who was the mayor of Detroit from 1897 until 1905. And there's Roosevelt on the top deck of the Tashmoo waving his top hat to the crowd. The Tashmoo was a large vessel with a capacity of 3,500 passengers. You can see two large police officers, one at the front of the deck and one by the stairs. They are each holding clubs discreetly under their arms. Look at all of the passengers trying to catch a glimpse of the president. The ship was called the White Flyer and the Glass Hack due to the amount of windows on the boat. Here the Tashmoo sets out onto the Detroit River towards the USS Yantic for a 21-gun salute. The Civil War-era Yantic was a wooden-hulled screw gunboat built at the Philadelphia Navy Yard in 1864. And we can see the backside of another boat docked at Woodward. First I thought it may be one of the Boblo boats, except it's too small. It may be the steamer Pleasure, part of the fleet of the Detroit and Belle Isle Windsor Ferry Company, which shuttled passengers between those locations. This photo of the Yantic at the turn of the century gives us a nice look at Windsor's riverfront. If you look closely, you can see some of the signs on the Windsor side. We can make out the words on the sign of the British American Hotel as well as the Bartlett and McDonald store. The massive building next to the Bartlett McDonald building is the Windsor Opera House. The Opera House opened in 1882, the theater was not a success, and it closed in 1901. However, the building was not demolished until 1978. Moving on, we can see the steeple of Windsor's St. Alphonsus Church. It's the original steeple, which was later blown off in a storm in 1919. And if you look closely, you can make out what's written on the sides of some of those old railway cars, Wabash. And we can see yet another steeple for a church that still exists, the All Saints Church. Back on the deck of the Tashmoo, Roosevelt can be seen hobnobbing with politicians and some high society folks of Detroit, and you can see that several of the men are adorned with medals. The Tashmoo took the party up the river to Port Huron, Michigan. The day was very well documented by press photographers. In this shot, it appears that Roosevelt is signing something, perhaps an autograph. Later that day, the Tashmoo returned to Detroit and Roosevelt was on his way. The president did make a stop at the Detroit Light Guard Armory, seen here. This location is significant because earlier that year in 1902, it had been home to the very first Detroit Auto Show. The Tashmoo continued on the Detroit River as an excursion vessel for decades until June 1936 when it hit a rock and then sank at a dock in Amherstburg. As for Teddy Roosevelt, he would remain U.S. president until 1909. A short time after leaving Detroit, Roosevelt was involved in a legendary event that would change children's toys forever. While on a trip in Mississippi, Roosevelt went on a bear hunting trip. There were apparently no bears in the area, so locals arranged for Roosevelt to shoot a bear that was tied down. Roosevelt saw that the bear was chained in place and refused to shoot it, saying that it's not sport, it's cold-blooded murder. This incident spread like wildfire in the press, and Roosevelt was seen as a heroic figure. A quick-thinking entrepreneur was inspired by the incident and created stuffed versions of the bear that Roosevelt had shown mercy to. And it didn't take long before teddy bears were being mass-produced in the U.S., and soon every boy and girl in America wanted one for themselves. Roosevelt was later immortalized on Mount Rushmore. For more history-related videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Michael Evans, Windsor, Ontario.